My name is John Holm, and I'm asking for your support to build a better Oregon together. Greg Walton's adherence to the GOP's unbridled self-interest and failure to lead has left a representation gap in rural Oregon. And someone must step up and fill that gap, and that someone is me. This is one of the most unusual elections we will have. From our quarantine/lockdown to how our federal leadership has handled the response to coronavirus. But I want you to know I will hit the ground running because even after all this, we will still have a lot of work to do. By 2021, we will still have so many of our local businesses that will need a hand up. We will still have infrastructure sitting for years that will need to be fixed. But most of all, we will have people that still need jobs that didn't get rehired. This would be the best time to get our much needed to-do list done, and we can start creating communities doing it. A high-speed rail system connecting east to west as well as north to south, joining with California to Washington, forming a West Coast super rail system so we can get more cars off the road. Having the United States Postal Service join as a partner to transport mail, we can remove their big trucks from the road and erase their carbon footprint. My father, a power company worker, had received a 1970 report from a friend which showed that due to Oregon's milder climate, we could be a West Coast natural power battery if we had started to switch to solar, wind, and hydro. That was 70s tech. What if we did it today with our current tech? We could probably rebuild the whole energy grid with the savings. We could add on to the farm bill so farmers could get grants to add solar and wind generators to replace their current sources of power and add enough to make them into income generators as well. My mother raised me that politicians are supposed to be employees of the people, for the people and by the people. I'm working for all Oregonians to build a better Oregon, and we have been divided for too long, and I feel we can rebuild our economy and our future and come back together as neighbors and reinvigorate the spirit of community. How has the coronavirus pandemic affected your views on the state of health insurance and healthcare in the U.S., and what are your thoughts about the response by the federal government thus far? Even with months to prepare for this crisis, the federal government had an anemic response that has led to the needless death of thousands of Americans. If it wasn't for the strong actions of state leaders, we would be so much worse off. And why? Because the Trump administration acted in their own self-interest instead of in the interests of the American people, and we have suffered greatly for it. This crisis has reinforced the need for a healthcare system that serves everyone. Not only is access to healthcare a human right, as we have seen, it is a matter of life and death for every American and for future generations. Right now, we have a broken system, and the Republican leaders are the ones breaking it. They have actively dismantled the Affordable Care Act and failed to put a functioning system in its place. We need health care for all. I have always been an advocate for expanding Medicare. Medicare takes better care of people and allows for better control of costs. It allows doctors and hospitals to cut administrative costs and ensures people can receive essential health care without worrying about going bankrupt. The current crisis exposed the failures of our private insurance system even further, highlighting an urgent need to bring our healthcare system out of the dark ages into the 21st century. No one should be asked to put a price on their life when it comes to healthcare. When elected, I will fight for a healthcare system that serves everyone from our urban areas to our rural counties, making sure that every family has access to care regardless of income, where they live, or pre-existing conditions. One of the ways Republicans have been able to maintain power, in spite of the fact that they represent a shrinking portion of the population, is voter suppression. If you are elected, how important will this issue be for you, and what will you do about it? This is a critically important issue that we need to fight for all voters. Voter suppression is an embarrassment to our democracy. My father always said we need to grow up or grow old, and as a nation, growing up means making sure every American has the right to vote. Republicans have been trying to suppress the vote because they know if every voter has access to polls, they wouldn't be in office. That's just last century politics. Many individual states have taken steps to improve voter access, but others are taking steps to block it, using voter ID laws and restricting polling locations and hours, among other blatantly discriminatory practices. There's no I in USA, but there is in us. We need to start treating everyone equally, giving everyone that equal voice guaranteed by our Constitution. Oregon has taken strong actions to improve access through our vote-by-mail system. I want to bring policies like these to the national stage. Using Oregon leadership as an example, I will be a powerful voice in Congress to end voter suppression. How will you work with any proposals that are brought forward for public land protection, such as wilderness designations? For example, the current proposal for the Owyhee Canyonlands Wilderness Protections here in Congressional District 2. Even though I'm handicapped, I love the outdoors. I enjoy taking my 2 dogs out for walks and getting into nature as much as I can. We should be preserving our planet as much as possible. There are times when resource mining is important, but we need to do it right, in a way that protects our planet and its resources for generations to come. Donald Trump is someone I wouldn't trust to keep a houseplant alive, much less safeguard our national parks and forests. I think if someone told him there was oil in Mount Rushmore, he would begin drilling tomorrow. I will take action in Congress to create balance so we can preserve and promote our natural wonders and wealth. When extracting minerals, fiber, timber, and other necessary materials, we must also be mindful about preserving our parks, wildlands, and other environmental resources. We don't own this earth. We're only here for a short period of time. We only have one planet to live on, so we need to take care of it. Government services such as education have been incredibly interrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. As schools and other institutions make efforts to provide their services online, some citizens may not have equal access to those services. Would you be willing to enact legislation that would enable government services to continue online, should we face such circumstances again, if it means that not everyone would be served equitably? Today's world is digital. No ifs, ands, or buts. So many industries are using advanced technologies, even our farms, so we must also move our educational tools forward. That means making sure every student has access to those necessary tools, such as tablets and laptops, in order to have equal access to quality education. And we need to make sure they are given the skills to use those tools. It's just one of the reasons I want to make sure Oregon both receives and allocates more funding for K-12 education. We also need to make sure we have internet available throughout Oregon, especially in our rural counties. It has become more and more apparent that equal access to high-speed broadband is crucial to having equal access to education and so much else. The coronavirus has brought to light just how fragile our public education system has become. The opposition can talk about the past, but I want to concentrate on the future. Today's children will be tomorrow's builders, leaders who will have to take us into the future that we will need to survive. They are diamonds in the rough, so I want to make sure Oregon's teachers have what they need to make them shine like the gems they are. For this to happen, we must pay teachers appropriately so they can inspire our children to be the best, making sure teachers have the resources they need, like tablets, but also modern, accessible facilities and ample support staff is no longer optional. 50 years ago, we put a man on the moon. We should be able to make sure our children have access to the technology they need to get a 21st century education. The ability of society to meet a common threat depends on the degree of trust the citizens have in their government. Given that 50% of our country does not trust the President or Congress, how will you as our representative help restore trust in government? Trust must be earned, and I take the trust Americans place in our elected officials seriously, far more seriously than our current administration. I believe our elected officials are employees of the people. That's why I will build a strong team of community leaders to work with Oregon's counties to address each region's individual needs and communicate with voters about what I'm doing to fight for them. One thing I will do to make sure the diverse needs of Oregonians are being met is rotate my team members regularly, making sure the people I bring with me to Washington, D.C. are bringing a fresh perspective on the concerns of my constituents. I also want to promote involvement in politics and community service, encourage others to run for office, and help give them the tools for successful community leadership. My work in Congress will focus on transparency, local leadership, and putting the power back in the hands of the people. Greg Walden voted yes to open the outer continental shelf to oil drilling. He voted yes on barring the EPA from regulated greenhouse gases. He voted no on enforcing limits on CO2 global warming pollution. He voted no on tax credits for renewable energy. He voted no on removing subsidies for oil and gas exploration. And the list goes on. Votes like this have earned him a rating of 0% from the CAF, Campaign for America's Future, indicating his complete resistance to energy independence. If you are elected, how will your voting record on energy matters compare to Walden's? Greg Walden's voting was against the earth and against the best interests of Oregonians, period. I wasn't raised that way. My father may have worked for a power company, but he was always proud when he would show us kids how a dam would produce electricity, or when he showed me a gentleman's house that was totally run on solar. He loved seeing natural power tech come into being. So when we received a report showing how Oregon could be a natural power battery for the West Coast, he had to show that to me too. With everything my father taught me, how could I help but believe in a green Oregon? My vote record will be a polar opposite of Walden's. For example, I will do anything and everything I can in the Jordan Cove LNG project. I also want to add grants to the Farm Bill to help farmers add solar and wind generators to their farms and replace their current power sources while generating extra income. As we work to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, I will look to make sure it's done with green energy practices in mind. Yes, we still rely a great deal on oil for now, but we can extract it in a way that minimizes harm to the earth. Also, we should be making every effort to decrease our dependence on oil. My head isn't in the clouds, but it isn't stuck in the sand either. We have to recognize our mistakes of the past to avoid repeating it, while still moving forward to the future. What is the one question you were hoping we would ask, but we didn't? It was your answer to it. The ongoing coronavirus crisis has devastated our economy and threatened the livelihood of so many Americans. As this financial crisis develops, how can our leaders protect individuals from falling deeper into debt or falling victim to predatory lending practices? What needs to be done now to financially support working families? This is an unprecedented crisis that demands unprecedented leadership and cooperation. No one has all the answers, but it is the responsibility of our elected officials to stop arguing and get to work, helping the American people weather this storm. There are some ways we can address the pressing issues facing many Americans right now. We need bailouts for individuals and small businesses, not millionaires and corporations. We need to work with banks to offer these folks 0% loans during this crisis, as well as to forego interest and late fees until it's over. We need to bolster critical services to support those in need, things like unemployment insurance, child care, education programs, food stamps, housing, and utility support. We don't have time to play politics. We need practical leadership now.